Good.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I have 6:30. If everybody's ready to get started, we will do so. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're able, please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the entire board is in attendance, so I will call the meeting to order. Dr. Roberts, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilden. We try to start each of our meetings just with a restatement of our vision, mission, and core beliefs. So a reminder that BCSC works to be the choice to learn, work, and play. And our mission is to develop expert learners by partnering with our community to invest in people. Our 6 core beliefs: we all can rise to the challenge of high expectations. Learning is most effective when we have choice, flexibility, and see relevance. We thrive when our physical, social, and psychological needs are met. Our community and school district are stronger when we partner with one another. We flourish because of the diversity and variability in our community, and our democracy and democratic institutions are strengthened by civic-minded citizens.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to gavel out of the meeting first thing and go into our public hearing. So Dr. Phillips, if you wouldn't mind getting us started. Dr. Bozeman as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Wielden. This is the second of 2 public hearings related to the Envision 2030 project timeline. And the next slide shows that timeline going back to the spring. This is just a review. Many of you would have seen a slide similar to this in the past, but we started back in March with a public planning session with the board, leading into a lot of work in the spring and summer defining what our facility needs were, and then 2 more planning sessions with the board in July and at the end of October. In between those 2 meetings, we conducted somewhere between 35 and 40 public input meetings with more than 400 stakeholders giving us input and feedback and suggestions. And then last board meeting was the first public hearing. Tonight is the second public hearing, and the approvals are part of your packet tonight. So following the second public hearing, we have a request for approval for 3 resolutions, which are the same resolutions that we would have for any lease rental bond issue. And then, of course, as we discussed last time, between 2024 and 2030, then each year will be a series of bond issues, planning, design work with the staff, and then, of course, the facility work itself.
Good evening. Thank you for affording us some additional time. Don't fret, I won't take you through all 26 slides like I did last time of all the individual, although I would love to. You know, I enjoy those things, but I will not tonight because you've seen that and the public has as well. But just 3 slides from me is just a reminder of where we are and what limitations we have in place and how we propose to solve them. So you see on your screen that the learning environment, primarily at the elementary schools, are in need of renovation to match our instructional styles that we have with our fantastic teachers that we have in BCSC. Northside Middle School in need of renovation as well. We have capacity and enrollment restrictions in place due to our facilities. Currently, we've talked to the point of exhaustion about the demographic study and the projected shift from the east to the west and what our plans are to combat that, as well as renovating and adding facilities at our high schools to accommodate demand there in the CTE coursework and extracurriculars. And frankly, I am not excited to be at the table to make decisions on districting and how we're going to serve students in this community if if we do not have the facilities to support them. Busing kids from west to east across the river, longer bus rides, that does not excite me, and I'd like to avoid that if at all possible. As Dr. Phillips mentioned, we have financial opportunity to do so, as you see, and know as you have heard, without increasing the tax rate. In terms of renovations, this is nothing new from what you've seen before, but just to reiterate and recap, renovate our pre-K to 6 learning environments at the elementary level, construct the 12th elementary on the west side of town, renovate Northside Middle School and update equipment and furniture at Central Middle School, as well as a few other sites, and then expand our CTE C4 programming to meet demand as well as our extracurriculars. It's the same graphic that you had seen last time and that has been made available publicly, but it's a synopsis of the existing square footage that we have in our buildings, as well as projected additional square footage to accommodate these needs, and then a checklist of the potential scope of projects on the right-hand side by building that we've used with CSO's partnership and help to develop the estimate that we have that you see at the bottom there, totaling around $306 million.
This last slide is just a summary of the 3 resolutions that we were requesting approval for this evening as part of the packet later. The first one is the most important one, and that's the authorizing a maximum bond issue of $306 million for the facility improvements that Dr. Bozeman described. And as we have shown you in the past with the current bonds rolling off of the books and maturing and being paid off, Stiefel Public Finance came in last time, and you heard from those folks that we do have capacity to complete these projects without increasing the property tax rate like Dr. Bozeman mentioned, and it is our strategy, our recommended strategy as a district, that we do not pursue a referendum for that purpose, because it would raise the actual taxes on those folks at the tax caps already. Whereas if we do it if we do not go collect signatures and have it put on the ballot ourselves, it avoids anything changing for the tax structure for any taxpayer in the state, in the city right now, or the entire school district taxing district. The second resolution there is one that actually starts the public notice of the determination that'll run on Saturday. And then the third one is really just a formality. It's something we do for every bond issue that allows us, if we spend money, for example, running the ad in the Republic on Saturday, we can reimburse ourselves from bond proceeds for dollars that are expended prior to the bonds being issued. We very rarely use that with anything beyond $40 or $50 for public notice, cost of public notices, and that's it. So we're happy to take any questions. I'm not sure how you want to handle Mrs. Wielden, from the board first and then from the public, as we did last time.
Yep. Okay. Anybody from the team have any questions? We've heard this a lot. It hasn't changed much, but just in case.
So just for clarity purposes, this approval is to set that ceiling. Every project will still come before the board for a subsequent approval of scope, size, and deliverables as those are scoped out.
That's correct. Part of it'll be 2 parts. One side will be the finance part, and that'll come each fall when we do the budget. Basically, we'll have our assessed value, and we'll know how much we're going to issue that fall of that year. The other part on the facility side will be Dr. Bozeman and his team, bringing the facility plan to you for that following year.
Okay.
Anything from the team? Okay. At this time, if there's anybody in the audience who'd like to ask any questions, you can step up to the podium. That is separate from the blue sheet, since this is the public hearing portion of the meeting. Hi, Mr. Delp.
My name is Chuck Delp, and I live here in Columbus. Before I begin, I'd like to wish each of you a Merry Christmas, and I would especially like to thank Dr. Phillips for his education in finances of this bond issue. I really appreciated the effort that you put in. Thank you very much, sir. All right. you will be voting approving a $306 million addition to our physical plant. Before you do this, I wish to inform the board of facts that I believe are relevant to your discussion. Over the last 6 years, homeschooling is the fastest growing educational system according to a study conducted by the Washington Post, and is growing at a rate of 51%. Private schools have increased 7% during this time, and public schools have dropped 4% in enrollment over the same period. It is important to note that this study was conducted in Eastern Kentucky and Manhattan, New York school districts. Excuse me. The increase, excuse me, I lost my place. In Anderson, South Carolina, the rate of increase was 378%, and in Bronx School in New York, the increase was 358%. The point here is that these changes are crossing urban and rural cultures. The primary reason for these changes are parental engagement. I make no judgments on the above facts. However, I do believe that this board would do well to seriously consider them when deciding on classroom materials and large increases in physical plants that encumber a school system financially. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dow.
Good evening. My name is Mandy Keel, and I'm one of the vice presidents for the Columbus Educators Association, and I'm also our CEA representative on the BCSC Districting and Facilities Committee. I last spoke during the board meeting on October 30th about our members' overwhelming support of financing any facilities projects through the route that BCSC is currently pursuing. As I shared that evening, it is mutually beneficial to our members and to taxpayers within our community if we finance these projects as existing debt rolls off, which keeps our tax rate neutral without an increase in taxes for any of our local taxpayers. Our members are also aware, of course, that these funds may not be used to hire additional staff or to increase compensation. On a personal note, I have taught at Southside for over 15 years now and consider it my home away from home, even with its oft maligned brutalist architecture style. I love it. However, when our school was built over 50 years ago, it was never intended to be used as an elementary school. And I've often asked my students to guess what subject was taught in my classroom during its days as a middle school. While they eventually stumble upon the correct answer through a classic game of 20 questions, none of them have ever identified the clue hanging in plain sight in my classroom. The leftover remnants of a world language classroom are the metal contraptions that still hang from my ceiling with the bulky old headphones mostly hidden from view inside. That at one time, some of you may remember this, would have been lowered from the ceiling. Students would have put those on as they listened to passages, and then their teacher would have been able to listen in. All of the elementary schools in BCSC, along with the original Northside Middle School, were built 40 to 60 years ago. And while our members continue to do an outstanding job of teaching in these often outdated spaces, the children of our community deserve the types of collaborative and updated learning spaces that are now so visible at Parkside Elementary. Again, we appreciate BCSC administration and the board's efforts to preserve the eventual renewal of our 2020 referendum in 2028, as it established a higher compensation model that has made such a significant impact for our members and on BCSC's ability to retain staff. And as has been the case with the Parkside and the Schmidt renovation project, we look forward to continuing to be part of the planning conversations surrounding Envision 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keel. What else?
Good evening. My name is Kathy Oren, and I work for the Community Education Coalition. We're a nonprofit that works in partnership with employers, with community and education partners on a mission to increase education outcomes aligned with the needs of workforce. And I'd like to make 2 points today as you consider the approval of the capital projects before you. One is that the capital projects tonight that you're reviewing are vital talent attraction and talent retention strategy to our community. And they're also key to the future of our workforce and our economy. The second point I'd like to make is that putting the capital projects to a referendum would actually be a lose-lose-lose for students, for taxpayers, and for our current and future economy. I'm asking that you vote to approve the capital projects. I would like to ask for your support that these projects move forward seamlessly without a referendum and without the risk of increased property taxes. The national workforce shortage is a critical challenge facing our community as well as the nation. Having high-quality facilities that support 21st century education models and aren't overcrowded is a vital workforce talent attraction and retention strategy. We need more people that want to live here while they work here. The preschool expansions that were mentioned here. Our community is a childcare desert with parents struggling to find affordable care so they can work. The expansion of capacity for 3- and 4-year-olds is, again, vital to helping more families participate in the workforce. And access to high-quality early learning opportunities are a predictor of better education outcomes and really better overall life outcomes for our kids. It's true that over 60% of our jobs need some post-secondary education after high school, and a majority of those jobs need something less than a 4-year degree. And that's why the career technical education expansions that are part of this project plan are really going to help more of our students be ready for work and ready for life after school. And finally, the addition of the 12th elementary school is really about planning for the future. The need is real, and we need to enable BCSC to plan for that reality. The cost of not planning for a 12th elementary school will be detrimental to students and detrimental to our workforce. And as you've heard, there's enough debt service rolling off to enable these projects to be bonded over the coming years with no increase to taxes. That demonstrates good planning and good stewardship on the part of BCSC leadership. Board approval of the plan will enable BCSC to plan and execute the projects in the most financially efficient and effective manner. If the community gathers signatures and petitions for a referendum, and if the referendum is approved, we know that property taxes will go up. And if the referendum is not approved, facilities expansions will be delayed and will be pieced together over time in ways that are not financially efficient. The cost to the taxpayers, this will cost taxpayers even more money over the long run, and we'll have schools that still aren't up to 21st century standards. So I thank you for your consideration. I hope that you will approve the capital projects proposal, and I hope that you will encourage this work to move forward without a referendum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Oren.
Mayor Groh, I'm a Bartholomew County resident and father of 3, and I just have a quick comment more than a question. The budget that you guys would be voting to approve this evening is $500 million, not $306 million. And maybe that's okay. I'm not necessarily trying to say that it's not, but it is $500 million. And I've spoken with many community members, many of your constituents, and I just think there's concern over ensuring your community that not only is that those dollars being spent both improving education and necessary dollars, but that it's being spent in the most efficient way to improve education. And I know there have been great presentations and explanations of money spent and stuff like that, which I appreciate. But these are just questions over the efficiency of that money. You know, when it comes to gymnasiums and weight rooms and things like that, those are nice to have, and I would like to have them. But are we funding the most important things first to educate our children? And then I don't know, just a reminder to the board, just to ensure that we understand where the boundaries are. I think there was some confusion last time on a budget vote with the high school teams model. You know, when you vote this money through, does that roll it out? Does that allow the bonds to start being issued? Just we can collect the money, we just can't spend it until your approval, or what does that mean? And why would that be different than just kind of doing it piecewise with the board? Just some thoughts to think about before you approve $500 million of our community's money. So anyway, thank you for your time and consideration.
I might ask Dr. Phillips, it's $306 million, not $500 million. Can you help with the discrepancy?
The $306 million is the amount of the bonds that we would issue. The total payments, it would include interest, which was approximately, if the interest rate was what the folks from Stiefel shared last time, which was, I believe, 7% was the maximum. That would include about approximately another $200 million in interest, but it's the actions of the board, as have been the case, any of these bond issues, the board only authorizes the issuing of the bonds.
Right.
To that dollar amount.
And then I think just to the other point, and I think Mr. Schultz said at the beginning, we would approve every year in the fall what bonds are issued, as well as the specific project details.
That's correct.
They're available, right?
Each year.
Okay,
right.
Thank you. Liz,
Good evening. My name is David Daup, and I thank you very much for all the effort that you all put into this and your staff has. I am a representative of the District Facilities Committee that serves on your behalf, and that committee has spent many years listening to all the reports, studying all the elements that the staff presents to us, and so we've asked a lot of questions on your behalf about these various projects, and this one I think is quite creative in that our goal, your goal is still always, as representative of our community, to work on the best educational opportunities for our students within the budget constraints that you have to live within. And so I think they've done a really good job of that in analyzing that, and from the district facilities standpoint, I think we strongly support this effort in trying to provide the best educational facilities while still maintaining the fiscal responsibilities that you have on behalf of our community. We have visited Parkside and seen the elements that have done. We are also very aware that you've got buildings that are 40 to 60 years old. They just don't meet the needs of our students. And again, I think it's important that you reference that, and I think you're taking good efforts in trying to make sure that happens. There is continuing to be growth and shifts, and I've always been reminded in this committee that there is a four-letter word called redistricting, and you really want to avoid that if at all possible, and I can speak from that from past experiences, having also heard things at the board level. Again, the learning environment is important. There's been really good points made so far. I think it's really a plus to your creative staff to think about the financing and the value that's created through this creative financing, and I think that will be very beneficial. And again, I think the flexibility of your facilities, not only for today, but for the future. 60 years ago, or 40, 60 years ago, people planned on these things thinking they were flexible. Well, it's pretty inflexible nowadays, and I think that's one of the things that we've seen from some of the professionals that your team has hired to look into those future facilities that not only do a good job for you today, but will also serve our community the 20, 40, and 60 years from now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Daup.
Good evening. My name is Kermit Key. I'd like to thank you for your time and wish you all happy holidays. The reason I'd like to talk to you guys is I'm one of those victims of the redistricting. My oldest daughter went through Southside from kindergarten through 5th grade. She went 6th grade at Mount Healthy. Her and my son had to get up at 6:30 to be at the bus each morning at the bus stop at 6:30 to ride from Countrywood Farms, right next to Shadow Creek that goes to Southside, all the way out to Mount Healthy. Now, thankfully you guys got some of the transportation issues worked out, but still, I get up and I take my daughter to school, my youngest, who's in 3rd grade. I take her there at Mount Healthy at 7:45 in the morning. But I have seen all the growth out in that area. I've seen Fox Ridge. I've seen all the houses being built at Terrace Lake, because I drive through there all the time, and you just see the growth. And it's obvious that a 12th elementary school is going to happen. I don't study national statistics to learn what's going on in my own neighborhood, what I can see with my own eyes and verify. So I definitely recommend that we move forward with this project, and I encourage you to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, board. My name is Jeff Logston, and I'm a lifelong resident of Columbus. I'm a product of BCSC through Taylorsville, Northside, and North. 2 children, K through 12 at BCSC. A wife that's a 25-plus year teacher in BCSC. My oldest son is now in his 2nd year teaching in BCSC. I'm the president of Applied and Blair X Laboratories. Here in Columbus, we employ 175 team members and growing. I say all that to let you know I'm very vested in the continued success of the school corporation and what we do. I'm encouraging you to vote in approval of the capital projects plan for 2 specific reasons. The first is Columbus expects high-quality facilities in our education system. Sufficient is not enough. As I said, my wife teaches here in town. She actually teaches at Parkside. I've seen firsthand the improvements in that facility. I've seen the benefits for the educators, the students, and actually for employers from the standpoint of we are trying to attract and retain new talent into our community. They may not be able to see the long-term quality of the education we provide, but they will see our facilities. They will judge us by our facilities. Sufficient is not enough. The second reason is you have an efficient tool in front of you tonight. We as taxpayers hope that our governmental entities are efficient operationally and financially. You have a tool before you. You can approve the capital projects plan instead of going to referendum. That tool allows you to be efficient both financially and operationally. Those are expectations from us as community members. I would ask that you vote in support and pass the resolution for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lidston.
Good evening. Thanks for having us all here today. I'm Laura Garrett. I'm a mother of elementary students, and I wanted to ask you as well to follow. Actually, Jeff nailed a lot of what I was going to just say, so I support what he said. But also to say, I mean, what a treasure we have to be offered such a significant plan with no tax increase to make our schools the very best they can be. As a parent, as someone who moved here and grew up here, and we have excellent schools, but our facilities need help. I also think another big benefit of this with the new elementary school is the neighborhood schools that we've lost. So as our community gets more and more disconnected, and our kids are bused farther and farther away from their friends, having a school close by is important, and we need another school on the west side of town. So I first commend you, BCSC, for coming up with a plan that is such a win-win scenario, and it again proves to me while we're here and why we have our kids here that you're looking out for us. So thank you, and thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett.
Key, I have a question.
Sure.
So Dr. Phillips, it was drew the public comment that it's a decision before this board on whether it goes to a referendum or not. My understanding is we are approving the project resolution. That decision sits with the community and anyone in the community on really if it goes to a referendum. Am I misunderstanding?
That's correct. This one was unique in that back in March, we were thinking that as a district, we would actually lead the drive to put this on a petition, but after receiving feedback from the community and CEA, we decided that wasn't the best path for us.
So it does
as a district.
rest with the community then, essentially, on a referendum?
Correct. That's correct.
And then the other question I had for Dr. Bozeman, I think 4 folks mentioned the Parkside experience. And so I just want to make sure as parents are going to hear, and I know many of us have toured, myself included, and seen the great wonders that is Parkside. Is that the parental expectation of standard of quality that we're expecting to see based on each school's unique challenges? And the ones that come off to the top of my head are Mount Healthy's open concept, CSA Lincoln's restrictive square footage. Ms. Keel mentioned Southside's glorious cement and concrete barriers. So I mean, I know all these will be challenges. If I'm a parent in the community, what's my expectation or experience of my school?
It's a great question. In terms of quality learning environment, the answer is yes. How that looks may be differently achieved than what we've done at Parkside. So Parkside, as you know, is about a $19.5 million project. We spoke last time, we have some other facilities that we think we can get to that high quality learning environment without spending $19.5 million, obviously. You mentioned Lincoln as a good example. Fodry is another good example. I know you know this, but Columbus only has 3 schools off the top of my head that does not have architectural significance to them. Our buildings are very unique. That's both a challenge and quite frankly, a really cool opportunity for us. So those things will look different in different facilities, but some things that we've committed to that you've seen in previous presentations are high quality learning environments in our pre-K to 6 buildings, which include dedicated STEM labs, wellness areas for therapists and those folks working with students, new furniture, new technology. I'm missing them off the top of my head, but those we've dedicated as a top priority for all of our facilities moving forward. But to your point, that will look differently in some places versus others. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? You already had a turn. Do you really have something? Okay.
Yeah, it was like in response
very
to
quickly.
questions that were asked. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just trying to understand what exactly it is that you guys are voting on, I guess, when we're voting through, the $500 million, but then we're saying each year we're going to vote again. I'm trying to understand what the difference is between just doing those, yearly blocks of voting this through versus, what are we doing tonight, voting it all through? Does that make it irrelevant, or I'm just trying to understand how that process works?
Sure, Dr. Phillips,
or
would you
if they
mind?
vote, say you guys vote it through tonight, and then every year you just say no. It's like your vote tonight didn't happen, or
Good question, Dr. Phillips. I think you understand the question.
I do. I'm going to answer it in 2 parts because they're 2 separate issues. The approvals that the board will make going forward in the following falls are related to the budget for the following year, and so we will adjust the amount that we borrow in that given year based on the assessed value growth to make sure that we achieve keeping the tax rate flat, which is the commitment that we've made publicly 712,000 times in the last few months. And so that's all that the board won't say, yes, let's issue bonds this year for 40 million. They will approve the budget that pays the rate against those issues. This is the only time the board will have to approve the actual issuing of the bonds. That's part 1, and I'll let Dr. Bozeman chime in on the other part if need be. But these projects, from a management standpoint, these projects need to be approved. We need to understand as a district that the board is supportive of moving forward with these projects so that we can plan how they're going to be phased in over the next 6 years, because it is incredibly complicated how each of those renovations is going to occur at the elementary schools, and how that would play in with when the 12th elementary is built, and how we figure out how to house kids in those buildings during the time that the renovation has happened. So it would be really difficult for us to move forward with just, say, 3 or 4 renovations of elementaries now, not knowing whether or not the following year the board was going to approve the 12th elementary, for example. So knowing that the board's supportive of all the projects being done in a tax rate neutral manner allows us to move forward with planning and design, allowing our architects to move forward with designs without having to wait each year to do that. And coordinate it in an efficient way that allows us to redistrict one time and not multiple.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips.
So how does that differentiate the two situations, though? So, I mean, I'm just saying, like, hypothetically, this board could vote support for the 500 million, we start our projects, but then the next board votes no in the middle of a project or something like that. Like, we vote through the 3 projects you were talking about, and then the 12th elementary, the next board could vote no to, or is it already locked in because of tonight's vote?
The request in front of the board tonight is to authorize a maximum of issuing $306 million in bonds. What boards do in the future is up to the boards in the future. I can't begin to predict what that might be. I can tell you that's what the request is in front of the board tonight.
Okay.
So the bond would be issued, but the district would have the money to spend, but it would just sit there without the board's approval, or how would that work, I guess, is what I think a lot in our community are trying to understand.
If I can suggest, perhaps we finish any public comments during the public hearing portion, and then we can close the public hearing, and at that point, staff can respond to any additional questions that they'd like.
Yep, I think that sounds like a good motion. So I think, Eric, if you can give us a minute to move on, and then we will have people available for questions.
I hope that's clear to all the board members before they vote tonight.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions? Of course, sir.
I'll keep my comments brief. Hi, everyone. My name is Cole Bennett, and I just want to speak in strong favor of Vision 2030. I'm a Columbus resident, born and raised, attended Parkside, Northside, graduated from Columbus North in 2019. I can truly say without my C4 experience, I would not be a nurse today. So I spent the last 3 years in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, where I got my nursing education. It was interesting to talk to my peers about my experience in high school, getting to go to clinicals at Columbus Regional, community hospital, and so many of my friends were like, what? We never had that experience before. We didn't have opportunities like that. So I really want to speak in strong favor of Envision 2030 so that my children and their children can have the same experiences that I did with BCSC. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Okay, I think that concludes our public hearing. We are going to gavel back into our meeting, and we will turn it over to Mr. Giebel for best practice sharing.
And instead of Josh Giebel, we're going to have Whitney Gaines.
You didn't look like Josh Giebel. I'm sorry about that.
So, no, Josh was unable to be here this evening, so Whitney's going to take over and give us our presentation on the Columbus Virtual Pathway.
Yeah, so no offense to Josh, but I think I'm probably a little more prettier than Josh Giebel, but he really wanted to be here today. He had a serious family emergency, and I'm just grateful that he trusted me to present to you guys tonight. So I'm going to talk to you about CVP, creating a community of virtual learners. And I'll skim through some of this stuff. I know that you guys received the slides, so if there's anything you want me to revisit, I can do that too. So our vision here at CVP is to set the standard for virtual learning, and our mission is to provide students a safe, flexible, personalized online learning environment that fosters academic, personal, and social growth in a competitive global community. So we have like 6 pillars that we try to focus on at CVP: accountability, balance, flexibility, community, growth, and empathy. And I'll touch a little bit more on community later in the presentation. So where have we been, or where did we start, kind of? I am also somebody who grew up here, and CVP was not here when I was in school. So where did it come from? So we started in 2018, 2019, because people were seeing a trend and some of the parents were taking their students out of in-person school and leaning toward an online learning program. So we wanted to make sure that we could capture those students and still keep them in the district and provide support to them. So that's kind of why you see our numbers were lower initially. And then something happened in 2020. I don't know if you guys remember, there was this thing like a pandemic or whatever, but obviously our numbers skyrocketed. And I think what we saw is that a lot of families, when being exposed to the program, that this was a learning style that really worked for their families. So our numbers have been pretty steady over the last several years. Right now, our current number is 346 in our full-time student enrollment and 386 in our part-time. And part of that decline in our full-time enrollment is because this past year we did eliminate our K-5 learning program. So that caused some decrease. And typically our numbers will increase in second semester, specifically for seniors. And some of the other things to mention is that we do serve a lot of diverse populations. So we have 17% of our students receive special education services. We have multilingual learners, and 50% of our students are free or reduced lunch. And where are we going? So now we kind of get into the good part. So obviously we want to set the standard for virtual learning. We want to ensure that BCSC has a viable option for any student that's seeking an online education. And we don't just want to be a regular online platform because they already exist. That is something that we know. We want to make sure that we offer services that stand out above what they can already receive. And how does that happen? So as we talked about, one of our pillars were community, and how we do that is with facilitator accessibility, opportunities to connect, high quality instruction, and engaging families. And everything that we do, we always are really intentional to make sure that we're doing it in a way that promotes the universal design for learning. So we get to talk about facilitator accessibility. So one of the things that's special about CVP is our staff works in a physical space. So we work and are available during school hours, Monday through Friday, and people don't have to schedule an appointment. Students can come in, parents can come in, like we are physically present for our families. And we also are part of the community. So one of the things that you'll recognize with a lot of online platforms is you probably will never meet your instructor in person. Most likely they probably won't live in your town. They might not even live in your state. So there's definitely that connection piece that you probably will not have with somebody that understands the dynamic of where you're actually learning. So all of our instructors are part of this community. Another thing that we have been intentional with is we understand that when students are online virtually, they sometimes miss that organic social interaction that comes with being in in-person school. So this year, we definitely have been more intentional of trying to kind of bridge that gap. So we've started a connections club where our students and sometimes their families get to come and we support other activities in the community, or we have our own. This November, we definitely had Connect 4 competition and turkey bowling. And I never saw myself as like a bowler, but after bowling with the frozen turkey, I really think there might be a new future for me. Sorry, Dr. Roberts, but it might be my new calling. We also have a student resource center, which is similar to like the high school resource area, but it's really been impactful because even though our students are online virtually, sometimes they really struggle with like a course or content or a specific lesson, and they really just need that in-person instruction. Sometimes mom, dad, or grandma also need that in-person support, so we're really happy that we can provide that too. We do study group sessions and we do senior projects, which is really nice coming from somebody who actually did a senior project at East a while ago. We won't say when, but I did one, and so I really love supporting our students. High quality instruction. This is something that's really important to Mr. Giebel, our principal. So basically, the way I understand it is we did some research to figure out what is the top online or virtual course provider. And whatever it was, that's what we wanted. So that's what we have. We switched this year to Edmentum, and they are Indiana's top virtual course provider for 5 years running, so they are the best. And it's been really effective. I know as an educator, we found that just the ease of it and the variety and the high quality of instruction. One of the things we're also able to offer at CVP is like live lessons. So what that would look like is Ms. Caruso, who is here, someone from CVP, for her U.S. history class, she does lessons where some of the students are able to come in person, and they're really able to do like working group projects and really like do a deep dive on a lesson. And so they get that connection piece, but they're really able to work together and foster that type of learning. And that's been really successful as well. And this last part is really important because I think what I've seen as a parent and now as a teacher, in in-person school, the teachers have a lot of contact with the kids. They play a large, huge role in their success, being able to monitor them, redirect them, all of those things. But in a virtual platform, our parents are those people in a lot of ways. So they hold a lot of responsibility to kind of be our eyes and ears for the students. So we understand that. So we really work hard to engage the families, like the whole family. So we do like quarterly open house events, we do workshops. And some of those workshops look like us helping families learn to navigate a Chromebook, learn to what Parent Square, Power School, and that they're two different things. And just also how to navigate Edmentum. It's really hard to monitor your children if you don't know how to navigate their thing, because we know if you ask every child, did they do their homework, they're going to say yes, especially if they know you do not know how to double check. It also allows our families to have regular contact with facilitators and administrators, and really, like, they don't have to have an appointment. Like, it really helps to build those relationships. And partnerships with our cohort team, like our principal is really great about, he attends their cohort meetings regularly. They're always in communication. Obviously, we have a large part-time population. We also have a lot of full-time students that might take a C4 class or an exploratory in person. So really fostering that communication so that none of our kids kind of fall through the cracks has been important. And lastly, our senior celebration. We just had our first one this May, and it was great. And it was nice because, like I said previously, like when some of our students finish school, it feels like the whole family finished school, because the whole family was probably pushing them along this process. So we did a nice celebration. We were able to celebrate the whole family. And some of our students, the idea of like going from having school at home to being in a graduation with a ton of people is extremely overwhelming, but we still want to celebrate their accomplishments. So that was really great. And I know you guys could listen to me talk forever, but I know that the best way to really understand the impact that we have on our students is to hear from our students. So our first one is Carter Gant. She's a senior. She's a full-time CVP student, and East is her homeschool. So we'll hear a bit from Carter.
My name is Carter Gant, and I am a senior. I chose CVP because I went through a really hard time with my mental health, and I was struggling to learn in the classroom setting. CVP has been a tremendous help with me being successful. These teachers have open arms and are willing to help you and do everything they can in their power to help you succeed. You just have to admit that you're struggling with school and find resources that help you. I would want other people to know how flexible and welcoming CVP is. Around here, it revolves around you. If you want to come in and do one-on-one sessions with your teacher, that is amazing, and they really appreciate that. But also, if that doesn't fit into your schedule, then you can just do a Google Meet or Zoom to make it more convenient for you. So around here, it really does revolve around you. You are the main priority, and everybody will do anything to make sure that you succeed. After I graduate through CVP, I plan to attend Huntington University to play golf, and my major is undecided.
And one thing special about Carter is that although she was a CVP full-time student, she was still able to play golf for East. And the next ones, these two are special to me, Javon and Dante Lawrence. They both have IEPs and have autism, and I teach special education, so I am their teacher. And they are in 11th and 8th grade. They've been with CVP for a couple years, and they are thriving. Like, they are doing so well, and we get to see their family and meet them, and I think all of my colleagues agree, like, they just bring so much joy to us as teachers, because this type of learning environment for them really allows them the opportunity to thrive, and they are just excelling. So now we'll get to hear from the Lawrence boys and Dad Lawrence. Javon, what do you like most about CVP?
I like how easy it is to get like help and resources because it's literally you can literally get in like a click of a button.
I like how you can go on your own pace, you know. With real school, you kind of go on more of their pace rather than your own pace, and there's no rush to get, like super rush to get something done. I just really like that.
All right, Javon, what would you like to do after high school?
I would either like to be like a photographer or a firefighter after high school.
Nice. Are you taking photography class?
No, not yet, but I would like to.
Dante, what is your favorite subject in school?
Art.
And what do you like about art?
I love how you can be creative. Like there's so many different styles of art. It really just interests me in art. I mean, like I said, it's just art.
All right, what would you like people to know about CVP?
CVP is a great program. I just like to let people know that your family, you can have more family time with your children. You can get to learn different lessons. The easiness of how you can navigate through the programs has been excellent. And it's just it's a good program to be in. Sometimes it takes the peer pressure of being in school and you're at home with your family. You have more caring about your subjects. You get to spend more time to research different things. You can work on things. It's just a fun program. CVP is the best program. I wish that when I was in school, we could have had something like that.
And I did not pay him to say that, just FYI. So yeah, and we have a couple more testimonies. I won't read those in detail. You guys can read them at your leisure, but we have part-time students who sometimes just use CVP to take their government and econ, which is great. When I was in high school, it was a long time ago, we had to take it like in summer school, like during the summer before our senior year, or we just had a really full senior caseload. So that's been really great. And then we have some other full-time students that you guys can read. So thank you so much for having us. And now I will try to answer your questions. And if I do a great job, I take all of the credit. And if I don't do a great job, it's Mr. Giebel's fault. Yeah.
What questions do we have? Yeah, Mr. Nellen?
First of all, I want to thank you for your presentation, and we visited a while back, and to see what you've done to put yourself, what I would say, above the typical virtual school. The supports and the focus on relationships and things that would be easily lost otherwise. My only question is, you said 50% of your students are free or reduced lunch. So do they have opportunity to have that free or reduced lunch, and do they take advantage of that?
That's a good question. So we don't serve lunch at CVP, but I don't want to give you the wrong answer. So I will let Mr. Giebel give you that answer. I will not get myself in trouble, but I will make sure that he'll give you an answer tomorrow. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. Your enthusiasm is much appreciated. And what might be your best guess as to the students served at CVP, 6th through 8th graders as opposed to 9th through 12th graders?
As far as like enrollment?
Yeah, the total numbers, the percentage of middle schoolers versus high schoolers.
Yeah, we actually, let's see if I can scroll back to that. We have that, I think. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. So our 6th to 8th graders are our smaller pocket, and it gets more. And obviously we have a lot of juniors and seniors who it's been really effective because CVP allows them the opportunity to graduate on time that they probably wouldn't have in in-person school.
Thank you, and I apologize.
No. Thank you for asking.
I saw that, I spaced it.
I have one question on the same slide, so I'll take advantage. What would you say is your best explanation for the inverse relationship of an increase in really part-time since COVID? I mean, of course, we had a lot that were full-time at that point, but it looks like that's trending upwards, and even though the full-time is trending down. So what would you contribute that most to?
Yeah, so I actually talked to Mr. Giebel about this one as well. But so our part-time enrollment has increased for a couple of reasons. So one of the reasons is just we're becoming more knowledgeable, like people are becoming more knowledgeable about CVP. And the other reason is because right now all 3 high schools offer like a designated resource period where they can work on their online courses. So it's something now that the schools are encouraging some of their seniors or juniors to do as an option because it's something that they're able to get that support while they're in-person school as well. So that has also contributed to a lot, especially having the cohort teams. If you have a senior and they are not, they have a class they need to make up, then their advisor might suggest it as an alternative while they're here as to adding a course through credit recovery program at CVP.
So just to follow up on that, so you said they have a designated resource time. That's with a staff person to kind of keep them on track and moving forward, right?
Yes, a staff person at their home school, so whether East, North, or CSA.
And then the other question I had was for middle school and for, I guess, early high school. Is there an intentional effort to, like, through the traditional schools to get the word out about CVP? Like, is there any knowledge about it shared during orientation? I mean, I haven't personally heard about it, but I've seen the building and plan to visit. And so I was just wondering, is there any communications effort from the home schools to kind of get that word out there?
I'm not for sure about 6 through 8, so I don't want to misspeak. I know for our high school ages, it is something that the new teams, like, they are aware of. And one of the things that Josh does, he meets with the cohort teams, and they're able to assess, like, students that might be a better fit for CVP. Or, we don't want it to be students just want to go, they want to be at home, right? So we really assess each student situation. Do we feel like they would be a good candidate, and do we feel like they would be successful at CVP?
Thank you.
So I think they slowed the assembly line down there of questions. First off, you've done a great job tonight. So I know you kind of said, I don't know that I'm ready for this, but you've done a great job. So
thank you. I hope they caught that on camera. Yeah.
So I don't know when your next review is, but 2 thumbs up, right? So I think somebody mentioned homeschooling earlier, and there was an article in the paper in June. Funny enough, I received it from somebody outside of this room about a week ago, and homeschool is growing, right? It's something we can't ignore. With this being the closest thing to homeschooling that we have, do we have any ability, you probably can't answer this today, but it's something to think about, especially from a marketing standpoint. Do we have an ability today to show those students' performance when they were in school and when they went home, or just their performance period? And so I think this helps us show that if this is a good path for a student, it could replace homeschooling. Some people are going to want to be home at their home no matter what, but this might help us to try and take a little bit away from the homeschool population and pull into this if we can show the value of it.
Right, yeah, so I don't have specific numbers and I don't want to misspeak, but I do know as parents are talking to their homeschools about maybe unenrolling their children for whatever reason, I do know that CVP does come up in a lot of those conversations, like, hey, we have this option, this might be, something for you to consider.
Thank you. As a daughter who is a part-timer, and you'd think having a mom on the school board, you might have a resource to help you navigate school, but she does not, okay? She is on her own. And she found this program and is taking an art history class, I think, online, and so she can fit another science in, and that's just a great opportunity for kids to get ahead. She's not sure what she wants to do. She can double up on things, so it can really propel students. And again, I don't know how she got the information, but she seemed to get it. So you guys are doing something right. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Good. Any other questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As you could tell, Whitney really was nervous about presenting here this evening. Thanks, Whitney.
I wish I looked like that when I was nervous. That's not how I look. Okay. School board member reports. I will start with public work session since my name is up there. So we held a public work session last week. We primarily focused on the two policies that are up for vote tonight, which is 2520 and 9130. So we had a lot of discussion as a team. It was an extended public work session. It lasted about an hour and a half just to make sure we all understood each other's perspectives. We could ask each other questions. We had the benefit of having some librarians in the room. I appreciated them leaning in and giving us some information to help us all figure out where our heads are at on those topics. So that was the primary focus of that session last week. And then Mr. Schultz, would you like to go through Hall of Fame?
Yes, for the Education Hall of Fame, the team met virtually, made the selection, and that award and name will be given in the February school board meeting.
Very good. Okay, I will start down at this side. Any other, where are we at? Board member reports. Any other board member reports? Mr. Bryant, do you have anything to add? No, Mr. Major?
Redevelopment Commission met a few weeks back, and we met with the City Council. It was a joint meeting, and there was talk about the Riverfront project that just this last week City Council approved. So awesome. that along with some TIF creation for 6th Street and Washington Street mixed-use development. No health trust meetings in the last 2 weeks, so pretty light right now.
Mr. Stenner?
No report this evening.
Mr. Grimes?
Yeah, I've got a couple things here if anybody can take me serious while wearing this suit. But Mr. Nowlin, Mr. Schultz, and I last month went to the Indiana School Board Association Region 10 meeting at the Pines in Seymour, where we were able to talk and hear about all the legislative priorities of the School Boards Association. Coming up in next month's short session of the Indiana legislature, which is scheduled to run from January 8th through March 14th. The word is already out that they aim to wrap up by March 8th, making it an even 8 weeks. But just to highlight, there are many legislative priorities from the School Boards Association. Just to highlight a couple, their number one priority is teacher retention and student support services grant program. There are currently 3 unfunded grants that focus around largely school counselors and school psychologists, both of which Indiana, I'll say it, fails miserably in terms of the recommended ratio of school personnel to students. And so the School Board Association recommends that those 3 grant programs be combined and actually be funded. A couple other highlights in regards to referendum issues. The School Board Association is making a case for the state to clean up very wordy, misleading language in terms of referendum matters that appear on ballots. And then just one other highlight to mention. In terms of curricular materials, I think most of us have heard about this. ISBA seeks clarification is seeking further clarification for just what schools can issue fees for in terms of curricular materials and what they cannot, and is asking the legislature to certainly address this year's shortfall by mandating that textbook fees be eliminated when the budget reopens in '25. In terms of what the state legislators are prioritizing, one is I Read 3 and looking at what to do with the schools, with the state's 3rd graders that do not achieve the cut score on I Read 3. Roughly 1 in 5 3rd graders across the state were below the cut score. And another priority of theirs being what to do with chronic student absenteeism. Again, roughly 1 in 5 of the students across the state were chronically absent last year, meaning 18+ days of absenteeism per school year. And if you drop that to 10 to 17 days of absence a year, 40% of students across the state last year were gone from school 10 to 17 days. So, yes, all those things. And then lastly, from the Bartholomew Consolidated School Foundation, the Saturday before last, December 2nd, the School Foundation had a good presence in the Festival of Lights Parade. Many of us walked along the school bus that was all lit up and distributed candy. C4 also had a float, and the band was well represented. And then a couple notes from the Executive Director, Nicole Cunningham. She wanted me to pass on that the end of the year is coming near, and it would be a great time to consider a donation to the School Foundation. A reminder to anybody out there that may hear this, scholarship application deadline is March 1st, and BCSFstars.org is where you can go for a list of all the scholarship opportunities out there. And then lastly, congratulations to Caitlin Hodges of Rock Creek and Jonah Henriksen of Parkside for being the School Foundation Students of the Month. Thank you.
Mr. Schultz? Hard act to follow, isn't it? Mr. Nell?
The High Ability Broad-Based Planning Committee with the longest name around, met last week, I think it was, and a couple things from that. One is that the group of people that organize the high ability, meeting the needs of high ability students, they do a better and better job every year of making sure that they reach every possible kid so that kids aren't overlooked and that everyone is tested to see if they would qualify. The other thing is, so at least when I think of high ability, I traditionally think of our academic challenge programs, but we have many, many students that are identified as high ability, and they're either in grades prior to academic challenge or they chose not to go into academic challenge. So a lot of our meeting was around those students, and they are the people that run this are working on professional development for the teachers who have a cluster group of high ability students in their elementary classroom. It's a little tricky finding the right balance of how much do you prescribe what's done and how much flexibility do you leave, because those programs are very different from school to school in terms of how many students there are. But there are a lot of students out there getting high ability needs met that aren't in academic challenge. And the last thing I'll throw out is that it was mentioned in this committee that if the staff person in charge of high ability, if that were a full-time position, more attention could be paid to high ability secondary students. So I'll just throw that out there.
Thank you, Mr. Nellen. Okay, we'll move on to cabinet reports. Dr. Roberts?
Yeah, the only one we have specifically listed up there is just a reminder of the various policies we still have in front of us. These were introduced in October, again, last November, and then I'm just putting them in front of you again. No specific recommendation on approval of these tonight. We have those other couple that you mentioned earlier, Mrs. Wilden, from last week's Public Works session, but these recommendations are based upon legislation changes and just getting them in place too. So we'll be bringing those back to you in January for formal approval of that extra list. Cabinet members, any other reports? Okay.
All right. Move on to public comment. So, just if you're new here today, just to make sure you understand the process. When you come into one of our meetings, there are always blue sheets up on the table up there, and if you'd like to speak, you write your name on the sheet. I will call you to the podium in order that you've signed up. You will get 3 minutes. It'll be listed here on this clock, and you'll get a buzzer, and I'll ask you to stop when the buzzer goes off, so you'll be able to see your time as you go. If you intend to speak on a topic and you feel like somebody has already represented your thoughts, you can pass, or you can come up and say, I agree with so-and-so, and pass. That's okay to do. Just let us know where your head's at. Please do not use the names of individual students, staff members, or specific roles. It's the same thing as using a name, so just please refrain from doing that and keep things general. I think I've covered the 3 minutes, and then lastly, it's our practice. Getting up in front of a room, being on a camera, having it recorded can be really intimidating for some folks, so we want to make sure that we conduct ourselves in a way that makes it, open and welcoming to everyone. So please, no cheers or jeers. This includes outward gestures, clapping, any verbal cues, any creative ideas. I think the idea is we just want people to feel like they can come and talk and have their voices heard and be respected while doing so. Okay, so with that, we will start with Amy London.
Good evening. I'm here this evening to speak on behalf of the Columbus Educators Association. I am Amy London. I am the president of the Teachers Union, CEA. On behalf of the association, I want to thank all of our librarians that we have in BCSC, as well as their support professionals who work in our libraries day in and day out with our students. I would like to praise them for their professionalism and patience as conversations regarding materials in our libraries have been a frequent topic in various places in our community. I would also like to thank all of those who came to the meeting tonight to support them. I appreciate that. The elected CEA Association building reps have put together a statement that they wanted me to read. It is our CEA public statement of support for our librarians. And the statement is as follows. We as the Columbus Educators Association acknowledge and support our librarians and educational support professionals and their commitment to acting in the best interests of students without interference. As president of CEA, I can guarantee the continued support from CEA for those members who work in our libraries. I appreciate the collaboration with the BCSC administration on this subject, and I wish you all a happy holiday. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. London. Lisa Inglis. I'm sorry I got that wrong. I'm sure I got it wrong.
You aren't the only person to get that wrong a lot. I'm Lisa Angelis. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. Wanted to say a little bit about the school material review policies that you have been debating. In particular, after the last working session, it occurs to me that the library content review process should not allow challenges based on the suitability of subject, content, and style for the intended audience. It should be based on alleged violations as it pertains to the legal definitions of obscene or harmful to minors. If not, somebody like me or anybody could challenge pretty much any book, and we're leaving it to more of a subjective, open interpretation. I see that as a potential really waste of time and money. I don't think it's worth doing. I think that the bar is purposefully set the way that it is from a legal perspective to prevent good literature from being removed from the shelves of the libraries. That being said, I also think it's really important that we do not remove materials from the libraries while the review process is undergoing. If we do, in other words, if something's being contested, don't simply remove whatever it is that's being contested while it's being contested, because there may be a slew of things being contested for a variety of reasons depending on how your policy is written, and you might end up with empty shelves like they did in Hamilton County until they got wise. So that's just were my thoughts, a couple of thoughts about the policy and the process that you may follow. Thanks.
Thank you. Mary Mills.
I want to say that since we no longer have the right to vote for our school superintendent in the state, it is important that we think carefully when we are voting for our school board members. and the people who are here to serve. And I want to remind you that when we vote for you, you're here to serve everyone in the community, not just your pastor, your religion, your personal views. So you need to leave those things outside the doors when you come in and consider everyone that you represent in this diverse community. Doesn't matter what they're doing in Florida or Eastern Kentucky or the Bronx. This is Columbus, Indiana, Bartholomew County, and we are an especially diverse community. But I also want to remind you, you don't just represent the people of the community, but you're also here to work for the teachers, the librarians, all the people who work in our schools, all the way down to the janitors. So keep that in mind, that the decisions you make affect so many people. What I had to say.
Thank you, Ms. Mills. Michelle Carr.
Hi, as a BCSC parent, I want to thank those who understand that books, like the news, reflect life. That life isn't perfectly peaceful. Life can be messy. Life can contain curse words, even from the most unexpected person. Even as a high schooler, some of the best people I knew could string together the most fantastical line of expletives you've ever heard. So I assure you that these words are nothing new to today's teenagers, just as they weren't to myself. Life can contain curiosities, lack of understanding, violence, abuse, and so will books. Life will contain love, relationships that are good and bad. Life contains people who have been formed from a myriad of experiences and individuals that learn that no matter what anyone else thinks, them being who they truly are is a thing of beauty. So too will books represent these journeys. Life contains good and bad decisions, and being able to see characters live through these experiences can help a young person make a better decision. Life can hit you hard, and many of us have experienced tragedy and trauma in our own lives. Sometimes such events can leave us feeling alone, and even if we have the best support system, it can be really hard to explain these feelings to others. And even if you have someone that can help you, it's really hard to get them to understand. So if you can find a character that resembles these experiences, it makes you feel not so alone, and that can make a world of difference. Just to know that someone has had this experience or understands this experience can help this alone feeling dissipate, and sometimes that is the most important thing in the world. In the end, books are going to be messy because we are humans and we are messy. Books will challenge us and make us feel uncomfortable because life is messy and life is uncomfortable. Books will give comfort and aid to those who feel isolated because, let's face it, folks, sometimes we aren't great at making sure people don't feel that way. And even if a group of people or one person doesn't see the value in a certain book, doesn't mean that it won't hold value for someone else. I understand the need to adhere to the state law, and I would like to caution against taking it further than that law, because if we remove such reflections and make everyone read the same rose-colored worlds, we lose the opportunity to grow and better ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carr. Carla Craig.
Hi, I am Carla Craig. I live out in Ogleville, work at Mount Healthy School, and tonight I just want to thank you all. You have a tough job, and you are not going to make everybody happy. So I appreciate your taking on this position. I appreciate your hard work. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your caring for our kids. So thank you very much for that. I do really quickly just want to say I have maybe missed our Mountain Healthy girls playing basketball because of the change in schedule. But thank you so much for what you do, and I acknowledge that you have a tough job. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Craig. Kermit Key.
Thank you again for the opportunity to come to you again. And once again, I want to wish you all a happy holidays. I am both a writer and a parent of BCSC. I was just preceded by my daughter's librarian at Mount Healthy. And I would just like to say you cannot compromise with extremists. You cannot build consensus with outliers. Dads for Moms for Liberty have no interest in bargaining their principles. They have made clear that their ideas supersede all others. Anyone that disagrees with them is called trash. The material is child porn, and therefore its proponents must be pedophiles. They appeal to a God they have created in their own image as the authority to what is right and wrong because it is only their reading, their understanding, and their values that matter. It is not their intent to protect families or children or strengthen the community, but to impose their ideas above all others. If you have any doubt, let me remind you of this quote from the Republic last week. In discussing his thoughts on the draft, one board member said, "I still object to no parental consent for themes of sex, violence, and drug use, but at the end of the day, majority rules." Majority rules. That's not a compromise. That's a concession. That's a concession with the promise of returning this fall with 3 new Dads for Moms for Liberty on the ballot. The public school board must stand up to these extremists the same way our nation did in World War II. They must be defeated because they will never compromise or negotiate. We already see them changing tactics by focusing on budget issues and targeting diversity as something too expensive to consider. They have to broaden their appeal because 33% or 43% will not cut it in 2024. Do not add a jot or tittle beyond what the state demands. Let the majority rule. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Key. I'm going to say Curtis Axum.
I've got a question. So I've been
Hey, sir, could you do that just for the recording? It'll help to make sure people on the thing can pick you up.
All right. So in the last month, I've talked to 3 different teachers in 2 different locations throughout Bartholomew County. All 3 of them have been tenured, and all 3 of them in the last 6 months have been attacked by students. Now, that may not be physically, that's online, that's throughout the student group, just throughout whatever the student felt like they needed to do. When they've asked for support, the emails have been received, the conversations have been had, but it's been dropped there. Whether it's been in this building or it's been farther, they're not sure. They just know that they had sent information in and it went away. So they haven't heard anything back, asked for responses. I know 2 of them have sent email responses through, and that hasn't been responded to. So if we're not going to back our teachers up, we're going to let this go, whether it's some kid that's got in trouble and they're mad because they got in trouble, right? And the parents have let them feel like they had the responsiveness to, or responsibility to attack somebody like that, that's fine. If that was one of you in a professional manner, you could take somebody to court and deal with it, right? We're sticking our teachers out there to fry. We've got Johnson County who's growing at a rate faster than Bartholomew County, and pay rates will probably exceed relatively quickly. Jackson and Jennings County are growing right now. All these are within a drivable commute to Bartholomew County. I don't know that there's going to be a reason if we let that keep going on, and it's a fact it's happening. I don't know there's going to be a reason for anybody to stay in Bartholomew County if we're going to let them keep getting kicked and attacked, unless we're going to be there to stand up for them and actually deal with it. me professionally, I see this stuff nationwide. Like, I deal with different school systems and different organizations, and I don't know that letting things be quiet and letting things die is a good answer. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Axum. Mr. Groh.
Good evening. I'm Eric Groh, and I'm still a Bartholomew County resident and father of 3. I just want to take a moment just to express gratitude for being able to speak in front of my constituents tonight. Not everyone gets afforded that opportunity. Regarding the policy you'll be voting on tonight around library content and procedures, I urge you, I beg you, to adopt a policy that ensures you don't give harmful or potentially harmful material to our children without consent. Our children are minors, they're dependents. By definition, they can't consent to this material. So I'm simply just asking you, as a father, before you give my child potentially harmful content, ask for my consent first. And, I understand the justification under current law and precedent that the content outside of the potentially harmful within a material has literary value that justifies the questionably harmful content in a work. But just consider that. I mean, we wouldn't take a parent that harms their child, but more often than not, they do good for their child. We wouldn't hold that as a standard to say, well, the good that they do has value that justifies that bad. I mean, I pray that never becomes our standard. And then think about it another way. I could take an actual work of pornography, a Playboy magazine. I could cut the spine, spread out the pages, write a rich literature through those pages that incorporates that material, put it all back together, bind it. Now it's acceptable for our libraries because it has literary value, even though it contains in its entirety that material that we would absolutely say is not appropriate for our libraries. So just some things to consider with current standard. The point is that we can set higher standards than just what's required by the law, and I think this is a clear situation where we're called to do that it's necessary in this situation. But there's mounds of publications of literature on this stuff. One example, the harms of porn and porn addiction are well established, especially for our youth. So that's just something to consider in all of this. So please, as a father, consider adopting policy that ensures you guys don't provide harmful content to our children before getting consent to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Groh. Mr. Delp. Okay, you're good. Sonny Courier. You're going to pass. Okay. Laura Garrett. I know you. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. We still have room.
You realize the acoustics in this room are horrible.
Oh, all right.
I have hearing aids. I'm having a hard time hearing.
Miss, would you mind just stating?
Can you hear me?
Yep, good.
Can you all hear? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. Clock is on. My name is Suzanne Smith. My children went through the system here and turned out beautifully. They love to read. One is, and 2 of them are retired, but at any rate, they also have a hunger for knowledge, and they don't take just anything for granted in terms of information. So I'm also a grandmother and a great-grandmother. I've been a teacher, a librarian, reference librarian, and a school board member. And I want to tell you all, you stand on the shoulders of giants, and I think that 30 years from now, what you do will be past history. When I was on the board, we were not sidetracked by the flavor of the day or the protest of the day or whatever was going on in the country polarizing our world. We were able to enact or enforce Title IX, which got girls into sports. And we have a few girls, I'm sure, that I have no idea girls weren't always able to play sports. And so we have some Title IX facilities. We were able to pull our corporation kicking and screaming into the computer age. Teachers, I was so unpopular with teachers. They did not want to do it. So we marshaled funds, and we were sick and tired of sitting on chairs in the bleachers to see concerts in the gym, Memorial Gym. And so we planned and marshaled funds and so forth to see to it we'd have an auditorium and a music wing, and it later came to fruition. These things don't happen overnight. I just want to point out to you a few ethics considerations as school board members. It's a high responsibility, but your membership demands that you understand the basic function of a school board member is policy making, not administrative. And you need to know the difference. You need to refuse to play politics, either in the traditional sense or in petty situations. And by representing at all times the entire school community. And 30 years from now, your names will not be, famous, but what you decide is crucial. What you decide is so important. And so on behalf of all the teachers here, all the parents, we very much appreciate your service. I would not serve on a school board in 2023 if my life depended on it. Thank you so much. You are underappreciated, but we really do appreciate you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith.
Do something about the acoustics in here.
I don't know what brought Laura away, but I'm grateful she delegated, Ms. Smith. I enjoyed that. Thank you very much. Richard Stafford.
Good evening.
Hi, Mr. Stafford.
I'm here primarily to say thank you to the teachers and the librarians of these schools. I'm a grandparent of 3 children in the school system. One of them reads well and refused to read for a couple of years. Her teacher and the librarian kept working with her to find something that would pique her interest, and they succeeded. And now she's bringing home books and selecting her own books every week. Interestingly, what got her attention were books in World War II, dealing with Germany. Now, there are pressure groups throughout the country, we have seen them, that oppose different kinds of literature. And some of the material that she is and will be reading about World War II, about Nazi Germany, are opposed by some of these pressure groups. But this child is learning. She's learning not only the facts of history, but she's learning what happens in society when diversity is rejected, when certain groups are targeted. Some of that material will be violent. Some of that material could very well be sexually violent because we know what happened during those years. But her need to understand, not only for herself, but for her future, is large. It is only through the dedicated work of our teachers and our librarians that she has had the opportunity to grow and expand, and who knows what she'll get into next. I urge the board not to go beyond state law, because there will be always pressure groups to say, let's not teach this, let's not allow students to encounter that. They will encounter it. They will get information. All of them are on Facebook, Instagram, you know it. That information will frequently be wrong and harmful if they're not getting that information through a source where they can process what they are reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stafford. Nancy Marbitz.
Thank you. It seems that some hope for compromise with those who are, with those proposing reforms and restrictions to our school libraries. They seem reluctant to realize the nationwide Christian supremacist efforts underway against the very idea of public secular education. So I'm bringing tonight examples from our very own Purple for Parents of Indiana, the acknowledged driving force behind the campaigns of the Four Dads. Purple for Parents of Indiana is a group avowedly dedicated to exposing the indoctrination and sexualization of children in the public education system, end quote. Purple for Parents Facebook page features as its profile picture a cartoon school board meeting where the members prepare to vote on social emotional education, and they're attached by strings to various ghouls labeled as teachers unions, globalists, big pharma, and Marxism. A scroll through current and past posts on their Facebook pages turn up various items of interest. In a video interview with Rhonda Miller, one of the leaders of Purple for Parents of Indiana, she talks about the nationwide effort to repeal obscenity exemptions that currently protect reading materials with educational value. Quote, Indiana is one of the many states with an obscenity exemption for educational value. There is a coordinated effort across the country, I can tell you, to repeal this, and we hope to make Indiana the first. End quote. Purple for Parents of Indiana also supports and promotes donations for the production of a film called The Mind Polluters. Per promotional materials of the filmmakers, The Mind Polluters is, quote, an investigative documentary film that reveals the graphic, comprehensive sex ed and social emotional learning being forced on children of all ages through the public education system. For Christian parents, public schools are not a safe or neutral venue for their children's education. The Mind Polluters exposes the dark realities of the intentional grooming of children into a worldview at odds with the Christian faith, a worldview of rampant sexuality, homosexuality, and transgenderism normalized through the use of pornographic and pedophilic materials. In a video interview, one of those filmmakers says, American public schools are, quote, definitely against Christ. Our goal is to educate, motivate, and inspire others to get involved in their local communities to defend their families and biblical values. end quote. Excerpts from and information about several other individuals and groups specifically allied with Purple for Parents. A featured organization, Public School Exit. The mission of Public School Exit is to facilitate an exodus of American children and families from government-controlled education. Thank you. There's lots more.
Thank you, Ms. Mervitz. Okay, that concludes our public comments for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for coming out and sharing your thoughts with us. We do appreciate it. So we are checking our time. We're at 10 after 8. We have our votes to conclude. I'm going to say power through unless anybody on my table says they need a quick break. We all okay? Scream at me. Okay. All right. 8:30 is usually my time. So, all right. Now we move on to Hal.
Okay, Mrs. Wilden, I have some requests for approval, starting with old business. We have had a few meetings over the last month, so minutes of the executive session of November 13th, the minutes of the public work session of November 13th, the minutes of the regular school board meeting of November 13th, and the minutes of the public work session of December 4th. We did have another executive session tonight, but we'll have those meetings for you next time. Additionally, we have Neola policy revision recommendations. Policy 2520 is the selection of library materials and equipment. Policy 9130, public complaints and concerns. I think you have the most up-to-date revisions of those policies based upon conversations that have been held. So those are my recommendations. I understand that you may wish to take these votes in a couple of different ways here, so I'll turn it back over to you for adherence to Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay. Do I have a motion from the board?
I'd like to make a motion that we vote on the old business as presented by Dr. Roberts, letters A and B separately.
Okay.
And then to further that, if I may, under letter B, I would like to make a motion that we vote on the policy 2520 and policy 9130 separately as well.
Okay. So, do I have a second to split those apart?
I don't think you need a motion.
I don't think. Yep. I don't think we do either. I'm looking at Mike.
Second.
I think it's just,
Okay.
it's just ask from the board.
We're okay. So to make it clear for everybody, there was a 3A. If you go back one slide, just, there you go. So 3A is minutes. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to vote on 3A. And then if you go to the next slide, we will vote on 3B, policy 2520, and then policy 9130. So we'll break them into 3 different chunks through individual motions that will come from the board members at this time.
So back to 8.
Is that okay, Mike? Legitimate? Okay. A formal motion. So Todd made a formal motion to break them into thirds. Jason has seconded. All those in favor of breaking into 3, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Very good. Thank you. Now we start over.
I move that we approve the minutes under letter 3A, old business, as presented by Dr. Roberts. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes and Mr. Major, for first and second. All those in favor of approving item 3A minutes, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I would move that we approve policy 2520 as presented by Dr. Roberts under letter 3B.
I second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grimes and Mr. Nellen. Is there any discussion on 2520?
I have a few questions. So, Mr. McIver, from a legal perspective, a lot of discussion has been around the law and the requirement, and I recognize that there is a minimum statutory requirement by January 1st. However, I do ask is, one of the asks was, or options presented was collecting parental consent and protecting possible criminal complaints. From your legal opinion, does providing parental consent provide BCS an incremental legal defense argument in the case of that kind of situation? Yes or no?
I have a client that is very fond of saying he wants a one-handed lawyer because we often say on the one hand and then on the other hand. So I'm going to give you a two-handed lawyer answer.
There you go.
If there is a concern that there may be claims filed against the corporation related to materials in the libraries, I think having a consent, having an opt-in, in theory, may provide an incremental additional defense. On the other hand, what the value of that defense would be, I cannot tell you. I think those claims would generally be hard for someone to prevail upon and would be challenging to push forward. So yes, there may be some additional defense there. I don't know what the value of it would be.
And then the second question I had is in regards to the statutes around obscenity and harmful to minors. Does the statutes depict different suitability levels within that in regards to children, let's say 5 to 12 in our elementary age versus those that are 13 to near adult or 18, basically adults in our high schools and middle schools? Or is it a single standard that's simply applied to all?
The statute includes one test for materials to meet, and that would be the test for the materials regardless of the type of materials or intended age for them.
Real quick, what about location? Is it, because we have not, I don't think we've talked about this, but I had in my notes for one of the questions I was going to ask, and it might be appropriate now, is last week when we went to the law seminar, there was a lot of discussion about library books, but they kind of shied away from books in classrooms. How do you propose we include or exclude based on the term library? Does that refer only to the main library in a room or a library of books that may be in a teacher's possession?
The statute that was approved includes the word or the phrase library materials. From other seminars that I've gone to over the course of the year when there have been representatives of the Indiana Library Federation or the ISBA present, they have indicated that the legislators are meaning libraries, the actual school library, not necessarily classroom collections. The policies that you have in front of you utilize that same word, school library, and I would tell you that my opinion is that means the school library collection, not any collection of materials that may be in a classroom.
So this obviously, I don't know that anything I say tonight is going to be popular with everyone here, but do we feel like there would be risk to a potential lawsuit for a book in a classroom that may not be managed by the librarian, may not be part of a library collection? I get a little concerned that if someone says, well, this is in my child's room and I don't like it, there will be somebody at some point that will say that.
So generally speaking, any materials that would meet the definition of obscene or materials harmful to minors, those materials are going to have challenges regardless of where they're located. But the policy that you have related to challenges and reviews is specific to libraries. So if you want to expand that policy, that wording would have to change. Whether there is risk there or not, people can file claims over any number of things. I don't know that, assuming we are not talking about materials that meet that definition of obscene, I don't know that feels like a high level of risk for the corporation.
And I think the other reason why I asked that too is we've, I think, added, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we added the suitability element as well, and so that poses another challenge. And so that's why when I'm talking about risk, it's overall risk, because there is no librarian then in a classroom. So who would be the one that would be challenged in a court of law then? Is it the teacher or is it the principal?
So policy 9130 includes an additional provision that was added after the last public work session that would allow for potential review request if a parent or member of the community within the corporation alleged that a material, that an item had been inappropriately selected based upon the criteria that are outlined in policy 2520. That list does include a suitability component. It includes several other criteria as well. So that process in the draft that is in your packet is in item J. If that policy is approved with item J included, there would be a formal process there for those challenges for other reasons besides just obscenity or being a material harmful to minors to move forward.
So we have to we have to vote tonight, right?
You have to have a policy by January 1,
which
as we have said several times.
I think if we look at our policy today, we have pretty much most of that anyway, right? We already have cataloging of books. We have a complaint process. So a lot of the work that we've done over the last, how many meetings have we had for this? A dozen?
I don't know.
Probably a dozen meetings on this, and we've already had a policy that we cataloged today. And we have a complaint process today. So we really had it all solved a long time ago when it's all said and done. My concern is because we've added or proposing to add, I think pretty much everybody was fairly aligned with adding suitability, and that's why we put it as a proposal. I don't know if we need to, from here forward, begin to have some conversation around what's in the classroom as well, because someone will consider that either curricular resource material in a classroom or library material. And in order to protect the teacher, the librarian, the principal, and the corporation, I think we need to have something that differentiates those.
I would just add, in terms of the policies that we are looking to approve in January 2510 would be one of those, and I believe, based on conversations, we want to make a very distinct separation with libraries because of the state statute. As Mike has indicated, it was very specific to that place, and then have classroom instructional materials and other equipment and so forth, and so that may be the opportunity to have additional languages in 2510 as is necessary, which at this point has not yet been approved.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second for item 3B, policy 2520. Any other questions or comments before we?
At this point, I'm motioning to amend policy 2520 to state the following language in the fourth paragraph following the Indiana statute notations, that the corporation shall identify and receive parental consent prior to providing access to media that depicts themes of drug abuse, drug use, excessive profanity, intense or persistent violence inclusive of guns, murder, child abuse, and rape, and themes and descriptions of explicit sexual acts.
Okay.
Second.
Well, hold on, Mike, I need help. I already had a motion and a second, and I think I need to make a decision on that before I can accept another motion. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I do this in the right order.
So I think Mr. Schultz's motion is a motion to amend the motion that has been made, which I think would appropriately be what Mr. Schultz is proposing is that the policy be approved with the additional language that he described.
Okay.
And so he is asking that the motion in front of the board be amended to the updated.
Okay, so I think just so everybody up here at the table understands, we have a motion and a second for policy 2520, adding the consent language that Logan just requested. And so we will vote on that.
Yep.
And then we can move forward with anything that might come after that. Is that right?
And yes, and it's really a motion to amend what you would then vote on to approve. But yes, that is substantively what you're being asked to do.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any questions regarding the consent language that Logan has?
We're voting just on the amendment. Is that correct?
Just on the amendment, yes. Okay.
Yeah, real
Yep.
quick, just
Yep, Jason.
some comments here. Last Friday, I was up in Indianapolis, and there was around, I don't know, 150 to 200 superintendents, school board members, and school lawyers from across the state. When they kicked off the discussion, the very first discussion was about library book legislation. And one of the first slides that was shown, is probably slide 2 or slide 3, was amazingly a large full screen explicit material on the way, basically is what it said. I was just kind of caught off guard to see in a room full of adults that we had a notice of explicit material, right? So if a notice is needed in a meeting like that with adults, why can't we have an opt-in section for students? This allows the parents to have a decision to allow those students to be able to have made available to them material with extreme explicit material, sexual, profane, and vulgar material. It gives the parent then the ability to make that decision. While I was there on Friday, I talked to several other board members, superintendents, and one of the things I mentioned was this opt-in, and they felt that that is a lower risk option than to leave it open to interpretation by basically doing, have we all seen the little disclaimers that come across all of the medical and other commercials? That's basically what we would do here, is give the parents a disclaimer that says this is the material that's in our library. Do you or do you not allow your child to partake? And I think that when you think about the risk that's out there and the potential for someone to, you could call it frivolous, but have multiple complaints for multiple books, I think that by not having the opt-in, it leaves us at a higher risk and allows some of that material to be exposed and exploited and put your librarians and others in harm's way from a legal perspective.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board members on this topic? So we are voting on a motion to amend 2520 to include a consent language that Logan has proposed here tonight, okay? It had a motion, it had a second. All those in favor of 2520 with the additional consent language, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so I think that was 5-2 against. Okay. I think I go back to the original motion, which was to approve 2520 as it was presented. It was also seconded, and we've already had discussion on that, I believe. Does anybody have anything they want to add in terms of discussion on that before we vote? Okay. So the motion in front of you is to approve 3B 2520 as presented to us tonight. All those in favor say aye. 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 All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
I think it is again 5-2. Policy 2520 as presented passes. Okay. Let's go again.
I would like to make a motion that policy 9130 be amended to strike letter J from the library materials section.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Any discussion or questions from the team?
And to reiterate, this J, could you read that for everyone so that they know what it is, Mike, please? Thank you.
I don't have it.
Yeah, maybe. Yep. Item J says the following. Notwithstanding any provision of the foregoing matters regarding school library materials section to the contrary, a parent or guardian of a student enrolled in a school in the school corporation or a community member residing within the corporation may submit a request to remove material that they contend was inappropriately selected for a school library's collection, given the guidelines described in Policy 2520, Selection of Library Materials and Equipment. Any such request for review shall be handled following the same general process as described above, including the possibility of a final appeal of any decision to the board.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, Mr. Nell.
So under our current policy, where we start with an informal complaint, and then if that decision, if the person bringing the complaint doesn't like that decision, then it goes to a committee. Our current policy does not limit those complaints to only things that are harmful to minors or what's the other one? Obscenity. So really what Jay is saying is it's okay for someone to have a concern about a library book that isn't just those two things. Let me give you an example. I'm telling this story secondhand, so I'm assuming it's accurate, but one of our libraries had a book about a Hispanic family that lived under a bridge. And actually one of our staff members saw that book and said, is this really what we want to have out there about Hispanic families, that they live under bridges? And the librarian looked at the book and decided that book wasn't appropriate. That has nothing to do with obscenity or harmful to minors. And I think that, and I'll say with conversation I have had with librarians, they're okay with wider discussion. They had more of a concern with just saying suitability by age. They wanted a wider discussion about, first of all, the book as a whole. And what we're saying is, if you see material in our library that you don't think fits our guidelines, then maybe you should point that out. I trust the system and the policy that we've been using, and to me, this is as close to that as we can get with the new legislation. I hear a lot of talk about don't go above what the state requires, and I don't know that it's a going above or going below. I think it's just that we trust our parents and our community to bring legitimate concerns, and we trust the process we've been using to filter through those.
I have a question around J. Essentially, does J apply to all levels of review under the current proposed? So, for example, the administrator, the librarian review, the committee review, the board review, it applies to all levels of the review, correct?
Yes, the intent of J in saying follow the process described above, the intent would be that that same process, including all of those levels, would apply for materials that were alleged to have been inappropriately selected.
So essentially, by removing J, we're creating two levels of standards. We're going to allow for an informal review that may or may not allow for that librarian. It's going to be a little bit different because in reality, J would apply to the recommendation of an informal review, but I'm assuming we'll allow latitude there. But we will then strap all subsequent reviews to a different level of criteria.
I think with J included, if J is not included, there would always be the ability for someone to have an informal conversation with a librarian or with a principal. There's nothing prohibiting that. However, if J is not included, there's not a formal process for it to move beyond that step.
But to actually remove it, you have to meet the standards of the policy. So in reality, that principal, unless they're going to claim a weeding situation or subsequent solution, they're strapped by policy 9130 in terms of how they review that novel.
2520 includes language related to the maintenance, saying there shall be standards for the maintenance of the collection, which I think would govern what happens in that general weeding situation. What a librarian would say is an appropriate consideration for that weeding, I think that is a question for the librarian.
Yep.
But in terms of 9130, which covers the review and challenge process, if it is included, if item J is included in 9130, there is a formal process for those complaints for other reasons related to 2520 to move through the system and potentially end up in front of the board. If item J is not included in 9130, there is not an ongoing formal process for those items that have been asked to be reviewed for other reasons to move beyond that informal conversation with the librarian.
And to be clear, that's provided to constituents today by practice and written and administrative guidelines.
Correct. The current policy only addresses instructional materials, but uses the word library books, which has created, I think, some confusion. By practice, I think there has been reviews in the past after that informal conversation.
And I think it's, and I appreciate Mr. Grimes' motion to amend, and I think at the end of the day, we have to at least speak truth a little bit about like the discussions here is, we're not talking George Orwell's 1984 or To Kill a Mockingbird. There's never been, I've never been a part of an ideological argument on books. This has strictly been about how much adult content is too much. And the graphic descriptions of violence, graphic sexual descriptions, which were read here, made the board cringe and honestly sent itself into its first recess in at least a couple of years from what I've seen. And so I think it's fair to say that the board policy should reflect the criteria all the way through the review process and not provide a offer of symbolic possibility that may occur.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board members? So the motion that received a second that we have discussed is for item 3B, 9130, removing item J. Yes,
Sorry,
Mr. Nellen,
I
that's
feel like
okay.
I have to say,
No, it's
it's
fine.
really not about do we think it's bad content or do we think there's too many bad words in it. It's about does it fit the guidelines that we have in 2520? That's really what it's about.
Yep, understood. Understood.
And real quick, Mike, you amended this based off of the last public works session, right?
We had conversation at the last public works session, and in my rough tallying of comments from various board members, I felt that we had a handful that were supportive of including this. I felt that we had a handful that weren't supportive of including this, and for an ease of your all's purpose, I elected to include the language in the updated draft so that, and it's in one spot, so that if you all don't want to include it, a motion along the lines of what Todd has made can be made. If you all want to include it, it can be approved as amended or as proposed.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to summarize once again so everybody knows what they're voting on, okay? It's 3B, 9130, removing item J. And I'm going to ask for you also to show your hand if you say yay or nay, just so we can be super clear who's voting which way. And I'm going to ask Dr. Phillips to tally for me, okay? You watch us like a hawk. Dr. Phillips, please.
Okay.
So,
just a quick process question. So if the motion made by Mr. Grimes passes, we still don't have a policy 9130, that would be a subsequent vote? Or
I heard Mr. Grimes's motion as removing that item, and so I think then there could be further discussion, but I think there would then need to be a vote as amended, because I heard him. If the motion is only to strike that paragraph, then I think that's all that happens with this vote. If the motion was to strike that paragraph and approve it as otherwise presented, then you would be done.
what did you say, Mr. Grimes? I thought you were. Well, crud.
Why you do the motion?
Go back, Nick. No, it's okay. Okay. Do we want to do it separate or together? I don't care.
I would move, okay, so I'll change my verbiage here a little bit. I move that we approve policy 9130 with one exception, and that exception being striking letter J.
Okay, thank you.
And I second.
You second that motion, just to be really clear.
And if that is the motion, then this vote would do it if it passes.
Would conclude. So we are voting to approve 9130 without item J. All those in favor, please say yay and raise your hand. Yay.
Yeah.
All those opposed, please say nay. 4-3, approved. 9130 without item J. Okay. Move on to item 4.
We'll try this here. We may have similar divvying up of items as we get through Robert's Rules of Order. And by the way, Roberts does not mean me. I've had that. I think Logan was indicating earlier he'd had that question. It's not me. So request for approval for new business. We have field trips and professional leaves. You got a list of supplemental contracts, a lot of them this time. School fundraisers. You have our list of claims and payroll. The amount for December 11th, $1.9 million. Payroll for November 13th, $8.4 million. That included 2 regular payrolls. And you can see the work periods covered there. Pre-runs from November 1st through November 30th was a little over $4 million. And then we have new policy, payment methods for school-sponsored events that was presented to you. We then have 3 resolutions regarding the public hearing today. So project resolution, a preliminary determinations resolution, a reimbursement resolution, and then an early literacy achievement grant that was just passed through by the Department of Education. And I think that is it. And so handle that as you may, but you may want to take those first few.
Yeah, I'm going to ask maybe in the easiest sense, does anyone on the board want to take a letter out of the consent agenda to vote on separately? Any letters that you'd like to be voted on separately?
I would move that we vote to approve number 4, letters C through F, and letters H through K together, and a separate vote on letter G.
Okay. Is there any other input that would say you want a different, anything else you want taken out of that batch? So it would be C through F and H through K, and we'll remove item G for a separate vote.
Take out HIJ.
You want HIJ, okay. All right, so that would mean we would do C through F and K. We need to put these all on one slide, Dr. Roberts. This is hard to follow in the audience.
I have
a piece of paper to follow.
You wouldn't be able to see them because the print would be so small.
That's okay.
But yeah.
So I think the proposal is C through F and K.
Okay, so field trips and professional leave, supplemental contracts, school fundraisers, claims and payroll, and the Department of Education's Early Literacy Achievement Grant.
That would be the first grouping. Then we would do G. Then we would do HIJ.
HIJ together.
Yep. Okay. Can I have a motion, please, from somebody to do it in that order?
Okay. Okay. So prior to Mr. Bryant's second, I will move that we vote to approve number 4, letters C through F and K.
Thank you, Mr. Major. Okay, so we are voting to approve letters C, D, E, F, and K. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item G. Would anybody like to make a motion on item G?
Yeah, I move to approve G as written.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Major. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Are there any discussion items for item G?
Yeah, just to explain this one to everybody. So back in the spring, I attended an event at Columbus North High School. It was a track event. It was outdoors. They required tickets to be purchased through a digital means, so they did not allow you to pay cash. They wanted you to pay with a credit card. I had my BCSC badge and was able to enter, no issues at all, but my daughter who was with me had to purchase a ticket. So I say attempted because the server was actually down, to purchase with a credit card through their app a ticket for her. There's probably about 20 people behind me that were trying to do the same thing, but again, with the server down, you're not going to do too much digitally, right? So I don't know if any of you tried to pay with digital means, but server down, can't pay. So we had some discussion, and eventually they put us through the line, and they were allowing us to pay with cash. There were several people behind me. Again, this roughly 20 people came in behind me and paid with cash. So this kind of brought to light, an issue that we have where I don't think that there's a problem with a school preferring a method of payment with a credit card, but I believe that cash must remain an option for payment for all school events. This event made me realize that there are many people out there that do not have credit cards and are not able to be in a position to procure one. We have, a 40 to 50% free or reduced launch rate, and that's that way for a reason, right? Not everybody has the ability to pay with a credit card. And so while we talk about our drive for choice, flexibility, and partnership with the community, requiring payment methods that prevent others from possibly being able to attend an event, we've in essence broken our partnership with the community. This policy that has been written does not prevent a school from having a preferred payment method of a digital choice, but it ensures that we have equitable access to the event by having cash as an option.
I have a couple comments.
Yes.
So, and I'll keep it very brief because I know we're all running up to time, and I apologize. I just did a little bit of research on this because honestly, this is one area that I've not experienced. I've not been to any sporting events in the last couple of years. My kids aren't there yet, but traditionally, I wouldn't see this as a board requirement in life. I think this is one that there's some local decisions, but the concern I have here is for parents, is this is not a corporate uniformed experience. So as you go to school, it's different. And I think that creates inconsistencies, which then creates frustrations within the community. Also, I think not allowing cash option, like Mr. Major discussed, this is really just saying that it has to be an allowable option. It doesn't have to be the preferred. The Wall Street Journal published that our poverty population, so in this case we'll look at possibly some of the free and reduced, is 3 times more likely not to have access to credit cards, and our Hispanic population is 7 times more likely. And so in reality, as we want to be the choice to have access to our education, we also need to be the choice to have access to see our athletic programs. And I think if we're not going to provide a cash alternative at certain sporting events, then we're going to have some discussion, because at the end of the day, what happens if Taylorsville Elementary decides to make that choice and have only credit card options, where the majority of their population is disenfranchised and needs that ability and would honestly like the ability to go there, but this will now create a barrier, and we don't want to be creating barriers to our athletic events. Again, this doesn't dictate that this is a preferred option. All this says is that it has to be a required option to grant entry for those that have the cash available to be able to see the athletic event.
Any other? Yes, Mr. Nellen.
First of all, I personally think this crosses the bar into micromanaging, but also I have to share that in my conversation with the athletic director at North about this, he had a list of 13 reasons, 13 advantages for them doing this. Things like it actually saves them 1 staff person in ticket taking. It simplifies their bookkeeping. It leaves no room for human error. There's no dispute about where the money went. And almost all of those advantages are lost if we go to the dual system, because they're still keeping track of tickets, somebody's still collecting money. The advantages of the ticket list is gone when you have both systems together.
Thank you, Mr. Nellen. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on 4G. Are we ready to vote? Any other comments or questions? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye of approving item 4G.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Nay.
Nay.
Do we need to do hands? I thought I heard 4-3, but I just want to make sure. Should we do it again with you? 4-3. 4 nays, 3 yeas. Okay. So motion does not pass. Okay, now we have H, I, and J left for decision tonight.
To be clear, this is the Envision 230?
This is the Envision
2030?
2030 in the 3 different kind of bullet points we reviewed earlier today in the public.
These would be the 3 resolutions representing the public hearing.
Do I have a motion from anybody at all?
I move that we approve number 4, letters H, I, and J as presented by Dr. Roberts.
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes and Mr. Nellen. Any comments or questions before we vote?
I do have one more clarifying question just because of the public comment. This vote does not require the expenditure or issue of, I'm asking this as a question, not as a statement. Does this vote require the expenditure of spend funds and or the issuance of bonds as part of this resolution? Or is this simply the authorization to put it out to the public to allow them to decide if they want to be in a referendum or not?
These resolutions authorize the district to issue bonds. We legally cannot do so until the public process plays out, which would start Saturday when we post the notice if you vote in the affirmative on these 3 resolutions this evening. It would be the last board action before we move then to start the process of issuing the bonds.
Gotcha.
And closing on the bonds probably in
So there'll be another board action prior to the issuance of any bonds?
Not board-wide action, no, just a lot of signatures, as you probably remember from the last time we issued bonds.
Gotcha.
With a lot of the closing paperwork and those kinds of things. Let me confirm that real quick and just make sure there's not another. It was on the Ice Miller timeline that they shared with you last time.
Maybe an easier way to put it is this is what allows you to borrow money through the bonds. Every vote after this is allowing the expenditure of money that was borrowed, correct? So the next vote would be, we want to do this improvement. It costs $12 million. Approve, yes or no, right?
Yeah, correct. There are no more board actions in regard to setting the limit for borrowing. That's the last of this. The next step, once the public process plays out, the next step for the board would be approving the amount that we would borrow in calendar year 2024 in the projects that would be included there, seeing presentations on the design from Mr. Funk and his team, approving contracts for the first of the bond issues that would happen during calendar year 2024. Again, this is just setting that maximum ceiling and starting the process for the public to either choose to pursue a referendum or not.
Logan, do you feel like your question was answered? You're okay? Jason, yours was answered.
What's that?
Your question was answered. I just want to make sure.
Oh, yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Oh, I got a few pages.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to be the difference between leaving and staying. So I apologize in advance, but I think that this is a very big deal. This is an extreme amount of money, and so please just indulge me with a few minutes here. So since January, Logan and I have been visiting schools. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to the first visit, which was CSA Lincoln, so I have to make that one up. But, just curious, I've been to almost all the schools in the last year. I don't know if everybody else has been to all the schools in the last year or two. It would be interesting to know, because being out in the schools, you see a lot of things. During visits, we were able to observe, make observations on classroom size, building age, condition of the buildings, many other things. When we received the full list of improvements for the November 13 meeting, we had better understanding of facility by facility improvement plan. This was the first time we really had a good comparison, especially with the cost, and that we saw what was being done by school. Lots of questions arose, some were answered and some were not. To reiterate to everyone, this is a $306 million bond, which means we're going to, in essence, borrow money that comes with a financing cost of $197 million. That means that this is a $503 million expense that we're going to make a decision on tonight, ultimately. When we met on 10:30 for a strategy session, I noted during that meeting, I was sitting over by that column right there, that it would be great if we had an opportunity to have a review of this as a board and go through the many different items that are on the list and understand the plan better. As I confirmed a few minutes ago, we've had probably better than 10, I said a dozen, I'll give them 10, meetings on policies for library books. All right, there's no money spent there. And as noted, we already have catalogs and we already have a challenge process. What we have not had is a full board review and discussion of this $306 million set of bonds that we want to issue. This is a tremendous amount of money, and while there are definitely needs, again, I've seen the needs, I agree that there's a lot of things that need to be done. We've spent more time on that policy discussion than we have in spending. Based on the questions that I've received from the public and questions that I've had on myself, there's some things that have been noted that I just want to get some clarity. So earlier in the year, there was a survey that was conducted, and there was a teacher that actually proposed consolidating 10 through 12 at Columbus North, creating a freshman academy, consolidating middle schools at East, freeing up Central Middle School to be the new elementary school. That would have saved us $60 million. I think it's 62 or 64 is what the new elementary school is. I don't know if we discussed that as a group as to whether it makes sense. I can tell you I am not from Columbus. I am from Terre Haute. Terre Haute North and Terre Haute South hate each other as much as Columbus East and Columbus North do. And I can tell you that all of you that graduated from one of those schools would probably despise the fact that your school was consolidated with another. But when you think about the future of this county and this city, $60 million could go a long way being spent in other ways to revitalize downtown or to bring new companies into the community. If we're seeking to provide an improved educational environment, then with this change that we're suggesting, what do we expect to see as an educational improvement? No facility has ever made students perform better. Student performance is tied very closely to teachers, teacher aides, parents, curricular material, and as I was reminded today, the amount of food that's in their bellies when they start the day. The amount of security they have at home to get a good night's sleep. All right, those are the things that are important to students in learning. So a great example of another area where I think we can improve, we talked about Mount Healthy, and Mount Healthy, based on the cost information we've seen, there's only 2 schools that are going to spend less money than Mount Healthy to make improvements. Mount Healthy, when you walk through it, is like a big donut. You walk in this big kind of circle. You're going up and you're going down depending on the way the topography is of the building. There are no walls in between classrooms. So in between classrooms, sound and noise can travel, which makes it really hard. I don't know how. There's a lot of really dedicated and great teachers that are there every day that, take it on the chin trying to be able to teach in a classroom where they can hear 2 teachers down. $197 million is what we've set aside based off of the last presentation we had. This is a lot of money. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know how easy it is to find $200 million in a community. I know we talk about tax rate neutral. I don't know what we've talked about as tax impact. And I say that because the money has to come from somewhere, and it's from you. And I don't know if we currently have a plan to collect this money. I don't know if our debt that we've been relieved of allows for this expense in addition to the $300 million. But if it's so easy to find $200 million to pay for financing costs that gains nothing, you gain nothing by paying interest. All of you know that have a mortgage. Why is it so hard to find money to pay teachers? Why is it so hard to find teachers' aides? I've talked to numerous people about teachers' aides. We don't have enough of them. We can't get enough of them, right? It'd be awesome if we could have a teacher aide per classroom. I know that that's probably not realistic, but there are places that they're sharing a teacher's aide amongst 3 classrooms. $200 million, where could that money go? I mentioned, I mentioned that. The plan that we've got presented, again, I believe that there are things that need to be done to every school, but I have a concern with the reduction in capacity at every school that is being proposed with the changes that we have. An example is Clifty Creek currently has 658 students. They've gained 41 over the last year. Currently, they're at 77% capacity, but if we move to the future capacity post-renovation, they'll be at 97%. That means you cannot grow in that school. You just can't. CSA Lincoln, 366. They're already at 105% capacity. When we reduce the capacity due to improvements, they go to 113%. Again, we talk about overcrowding. How many kids per classroom? We've talked about how many kids per school, but how many kids per classroom? On this list that I have here, when we look at the ADM and we look at the future capacity changes with renovations, Clifty Creek and Richards have both gone up. Smith has gone down. That's an anomaly on the east side. But when we look at Mount Healthy and we look at Southside, both of them slightly decreased in enrollment over the last year. That's the side of town where there's growth. You've said it, you've driven it, you've lived it. Why are the schools losing students in those areas, right? So I've got a concern there. When we speak of growth, we think about the trends especially with ADM and demographic studies that were presented to us on 10/23. The projected enrollment from 2021 to 2033 is down. It's down. Less students. Why are we spending $60 million on a new school if we have less students? I understand it may not be popular to move kids or redistrict. I understand that. We've had several people now, at least 3 now, I think, that have come in here and had similar complaints. I don't disagree that it's not the right thing, that it's the right thing to do. I think it's wrong to do that, but at the same time, $60 million for a school that we couldn't fill quickly. I know there's a lot of talk about CRH and building this new housing and medical area on that side of town, and that's what this school would support. But even with that, those numbers are not in the projections that we show. So I don't know if that's an oversight or if that's real, but there's no increase that I see that would justify $60 million on a new school. One of the last things I have here, I've talked to several coaches and athletes. I understand the need for space. However, I do not believe we need to spend $50 million on 2 gyms and 2 weight rooms. We have talked about this in the past. I was able to get a tour, Logan was with me as well, of St. Peter's Gym, which has multiple area for basketball, bleachers. They have a front area with locker rooms and upstairs as well. That cost them a little over it was right around $5.3 million. With inflation, I give them $10 million. You could do 2 gyms, just like St. Peter's for 20 million. Just saved you $30 million. Do we need to build another facility, 2 facilities, 3 facilities, 4? I don't think we need to do that. I think if we're mindful, I made a comment about pole barns, and I don't think everybody thought it was funny, but it's true. The reality of it is if you talk to people, especially the coaches and others that need this space, they need a roof and 4 walls with a floor that they can play on, right? Football players don't care how pretty it is. It's going to get dirty. Baseball players, softball players that are coming in before their season starts, they just need a place to play catch, to hit balls, right? So it's something that I think that's interesting. I had asked previously for PE wait list, how many classes, how many teachers, how much space was needed. I did not get a response for that. So I don't know, when we say it's for PE space, I don't know that it's justified if we can't give a number to somebody that asked for it. I know that we're concerned with the size of schools, and Southside is deemed too large. We've talked about the ideal classroom size, but we've never gotten to a number. I don't know how we get to a number. I know we did a survey and there was some public input, and they said it was 700 kids would be about right. But I don't know what the right size is for a classroom. Does a classroom 30 kids or is it 20 kids? I think we could probably, if we went and looked, we could find justification that smaller class sizes yield better grades. I think it gives more personal interface between the teacher and the student. So if anything, I would rather build more classrooms in schools and hire more teachers. The last thing is I want to just make sure that there are 40 schools that have more students in the iRead 3 testing than Southside, and 21 that are worse. Southside's doing a good job. They're our 4th best school, but we are 246th out of 364 for our iRead scores. That means 68% of the state is doing better than we are. All right, so I want you to think about this. I want you to think about where we spend our money, how we spend our money. I know we need to make investments in schools. I think the keys are we have to look at HVAC, security, and roofing as the immediate expenses. I think we need to then have a good plan for rolling out the next round. I think $306 million today is too much to commit to. I think it's more wise, and I think it's more logical for us to chunk this out one bite at a time and make sure that our investments are being made more in our teachers, our aides, curricular materials, along with welcoming back our parents into schools. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Major is done. Do we have any other comments or questions from the board members on this topic? Okay, so
Mr. Woodland, I would just indicate that part of what I heard was that we weren't being very responsive to the questions from the board, and I will say that Dr. Bozeman and Dr. Phillips have been over backwards to make sure that this board is as informed as is possible regarding this large request for expenditures.
I would agree with that.
I'll make my comment brief. To give my vote away before we vote, I can say that I'm going to absolutely vote for the capital projects plan. And as a school board member, and again, as an educator for 33 years, I absolutely sit up here with kids first and foremost in my mind. And while I agree that the quality of teachers and TAs and other school personnel arguably matter the most in the proper education of kids, the reality is times change and facilities do matter and need to be updated and kept relevant for the times and the needs of kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes.
I think I'll join in, giving the vote away. At the end of the day, I support the capital projects on the broad breadth of them. I think at the end of the day, $306 million with $190 million in carrying costs for interest is a large bite, and that's why I've asked repetitively, are we committing? I think there are immediate needs. I've been in all the elementary schools. The only thing I caution is that Parkside is an experience. It's not one that can be easily replicated across our school portfolio, just given the unique architectural needs of our schools. And so I caution that, and I also caution some of the later spending. So, that's one reason why I believe that the board has the ability to essentially move project by project. And for example, like Mr. Major, I share similar concerns around the gymnasiums, which also I have joint requests that were not given. And so I do have some of those concerns as well. However, for the elementary schools, I think there's a lot of opportunity needed, and similar to Northside, which again I attended and I don't think has seen any renovation since my attendance. Honestly, I saw very similar furniture from when I was there. And so I just wanted to kind of make that statement.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schultz, any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. So we have item 4, H, I, and J. There was a motion, there was a second, and there has been discussion. Those are up for approval. I'm going to ask for a show of hands along with your vote, just to make sure if I can ask Dr. Phillips to tally again for me. So all those in favor of approving items 4, H, I, and J, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand.
No.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes 6-1. Okay.
I request approval of the HR recommendations as presented this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Blake. Do I have a motion from the board?
Motion to approve the HR recommendations as provided by Dr. Pleak.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. All those in favor of requesting the HR recommendations, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Pleak.
Thank you.
Hey, Dr. Pleak, sorry. Hey, one quick, I haven't looked in a while. Where's the corporation with open positions currently?
We currently have one. I believe we have one position, teaching position.
Out of a couple thousand. It's pretty good odds, Dr.
Out of
Pleak.
769 teachers, we have one opening. Thank you.
Okay. Board input and review. Mr. Bryant, can I start with you, please? Anything you'd like to conclude? Enough said. Mr. Major?
Yeah, I did get some responses from some principals. So CSA Lincoln Athletics ended their season for both the boys and girls at 10-0 for the first time ever. So thank you, Mr. Finley, for the update, and best of luck on the upcoming Super Saturday. I got a later update that did not hit for the last time from Mr. Mahaffey at Clifty Creek. And they had a wonderful Veterans Day event, and the choir performed many songs and created a video that was shared with me. The sixth graders helped to greet veterans and to read poems to them. The school provided great support to veterans, and the many families that attended shared their gratefulness in that, so thank you for that. I do have one thing that I would ask is I've gotten several responses from through my daughter about the Super Saturday being way too early this year. And there are several cheerleaders that are upset because they've not had as much time as they'd like to prepare for that. It's usually in January, and this year it's about a month or so earlier. So they were hoping that some consideration might be put in next year to hopefully put that back to its old time, so that the kids can have a little more time to put into giving a good show to everybody. And the last thing, I wanted to just tell everybody thank you for their time. Be careful if you're traveling over the next several weeks, and to have a Merry Christmas.
Mr. Stenner? Do you have
Wonderful presentations tonight. Very interesting how things are changing, and work with the CVP to try and keep up with some of the changes. I always am impressed with the Lilly Endowment, working with the Heritage Fund, announcing 2 Lilly Scholars each year. I neglected to write down their names, but I noted that both Lilly Scholars this year are at East High School, or enrolled at East High School. Maybe one of them is CVP, or maybe one of them is CSA. Congratulations to them both and their families. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for Mrs. Wilden. Forgive me just a moment. Jana Oersma is here in the front row. This is Jana's last school board meeting with us. She has been with the Republic for how many years now, Jana? Yeah, so in our board meeting, we always invite her to a board meeting before just to make sure she has all the agenda topics and so forth. And I think she's done a great job representing the Republic within our community. So wish her the best.
Yay.
It'd be close to family in Illinois, I believe, right, Jana? Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I would just like to maybe thank my peers here on the board. We covered a lot of really heavy stuff tonight and kind of put a pin in some things that we've been working on for months and months and months. I also echo Dr. Roberts' comment. There has never been a question that I have wanted to have asked that I've not had a very thorough, immediate response. I feel like the whole staff that we get to work with here does a phenomenal job helping us understand the situation and forming our opinions. And we take this amount of time because I like to believe we come into this with an open mind, and we need to fill that up with information and help us make the best decisions. And we've all made those decisions tonight. So anyway, it was a good night in terms of us kind of getting through some big steps on a few topics. And I also just want to go back to the best practice, the CVP. Those sessions, I appreciate they are in here because I have so much to learn. Our school corporation does so much work. And you think you understand something, and then you see presentations like that, and you realize it's so much deeper, so much richer, so many caring, enthusiastic people doing work, and it just makes you feel pretty good about what we do. So that was awesome. Mr. Grimes.
First off, thanks to the community members that were here and spoke this evening and/or just simply came as interested, invested stakeholders in the corporation. Lots going on this week. Robotics has some things going on. Best wishes, good luck also. Elementary basketball wraps up Super Saturday, the cheer competition. Best wishes to the music departments at East and North as they have holiday concerts later this week. Good luck to the wrestling, swimming, diving, basketball teams at Northeast as they enter rivalry week. And then lastly, I would just like to say I voted the way I did tonight on a few issues because as a school board member, I feel that my responsibility is to help govern the schools. I know I said this at our last public work session, and I think there's a difference between governing the schools and attempting to run the schools. And I certainly, outside of kids first, I keep that in mind as well when decisions are made, and try to walk that line between governing and attempting to run the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schultz.
So running after Mr. Grimes and listing all the athletic things I had, but I did catch one that he didn't have, which is Central Middle School Spell Bowl team is going to the state finals, so congratulations to them. Also want to thank the presenters and speakers, and very similarly to what Mr. Grimes, just to justify my position is ideologically, I kind of presented this in a prior meeting. I see a child's education like a board table. Around it, you got family members, teachers, pastors, important figures of this child's life, but at the end of the day, the head of the table is the parent. And so I always feel when it's possibly at risk of hurting the child, that's where I feel like we have to seek that consent from the head of the table.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
So I have 3 commendations that I want to mention tonight. One, since the last board meeting, I attended a meeting at the Commons that was hosted by IU Columbus and the Columbus Area Chamber of Commerce. They brought in 4 economists from around the state that talked about the future of the economy in Indiana and in Bartholomew County. But my commendation is to Natalie Perry, who is an economics teacher at North. She was there with 20 of her students.
Oh.
And that was the highlight of the thing for me, was see that. Also, since the last meeting, I was able to attend the East High School performance of the musical Chicago, and it was outstanding, and I would send commendations to the music and drama departments at East. It was great. And the other one is actually Mr. Major was talking about visiting schools, and one of the things that I have come away with, especially from the elementary schools that we have visited, is how above and beyond our teachers go to make situations work that seem unworkable. I mean, when you see small groups of kids working at tables in hallways, and you see teachers at Mount Healthy putting up barriers to make enclosed spaces when there are no enclosed spaces. The list goes on and on. And for those teachers, I am glad we're moving forward. Sorry. With our vote tonight, and I would reiterate that Dr. Phillips and Dr. Bozeman have gone above and beyond in terms of answering questions. Sorry. Good thing it's the end of the meeting. So one other thing. So I was at North High School and we went through 4 years of reconstruction. And the year after that, when we had the new facility, 2 of my teachers and I were doing a workshop in Westerville, Ohio, which is a fairly upper-class suburb of Columbus, Ohio. And we walked into this very nice high school where we were doing the workshop for their teachers. And we all had the same sense that this is the first time we've walked into a school and weren't envious. And that was a wonderful feeling. And I look forward to when our elementary teachers especially can experience that.
Very good. Thank you.
Ms. Wielden?
Yes, Mr. Sten.
I found that Mr. Major can save me. He knows the names of the 2 Lilly scholars at East.
Yeah, I think it was Savanji Patel and Nadia Harris.
Good. Okay. Upcoming dates. So we have our next regular school board meeting on January 8th. That is a reorganizational meeting. So every year we revote on our executive committee on the board, and that will take place on the 8th. And then we have another regular school board meeting January 22nd. Happy holidays to everybody. Please enjoy your break. Meeting adjourned.